Will what Jungkook just said 5 minutes ago really change their relationship forever? Why does Taehyung look so happy in the silence? Write your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next update. The story is just beginning. And you'll have a hard time believing what happens next. Have you ever seen a person who appears calm on the outside but is experiencing a severe storm on the inside? 5 minutes ago, the atmosphere in Hybe's practice area suddenly changed in a way that was hard to explain in words. The still on camera records every second. And in the midst of that silence, Jungkook looks at Taehyung with an expression never seen before. Only two humans have finally stopped pretending. The first sentence that came out of Jungkook's lips caused the entire room to hold their breath. I've kept it to myself for too long, he said quietly, almost in a whisper, yet enough to make the world pause. Within a few seconds, the mood altered. Taehyung's expression is displayed on a monitor screen while the camera remains on, something rarely seen. A mixture of relief and genuine happiness. But what exactly just happened? Some of the crew members at the back of the room even gave each other doubtful looks, if it was part of the recorded content or a real confession that wasn't supposed to be recorded. Jungkook wasn't reading the script, that's for sure. The way his eyes trembled. It was all real, as evidenced by his labored breathing and the way his hands clasped the microphone. He is not a part of the story. He is speaking in his own voice. In the meantime, Taehyung does not speak Malay. But the little smile that appeared on his face was enough to make anyone wonder. Did he know from the beginning what Jungkook was going to reveal? Or is it just a smile? A form of acceptance of something that has been waiting for. A few minutes before the incident, Jungkook appeared to be agitated. He stared as he walked around the corner of the rehearsal room, as if he were conversing with a reflection of himself in the large mirror in front of him. Behind him, Taehyung is seated and adjusting the headphones as she watches Jungkook move with an eye that is hard to understand. Something that hadn't been said was floating around in the air, but seemed to everyone in the room to be obvious. The footsteps and the air conditioning sound of the crew, even the small clinking of water bottles were heard so clearly among the silence. Jungkook stared at the reflection of himself in the mirror, then took a deep breath before finally turning towards Tae. At that point, a camera set to record their practice session suddenly appeared, caught something that wasn't on the production schedule. An admission. The words are simple, but the way they're pronounced makes everyone feel the vibration. No background music, no sound effects, and merely the real sound of a heart that has held back for too long. She said something she never anticipated speaking in front of the camera. The people in the room began one by one to realize that they were witnessing a moment that would become history. Even to the other members. Jungkook's voice was audible enough in the next room to stop them talking. Suga, a person who checking the music arrangement, could only stare at the door as if he knew something important was taking place behind the wall. Who could usually calm any situation, this time simply fell silent. However, Jungkook's words were not the most interesting aspect. It was Taehyung's reaction. While a lot of people may cry or be surprised, he shows expressions that are difficult to explain. A warm, smooth, almost grateful look. He's not trying to cover up his feelings. It doesn't back down. He simply sat down, looked at Jungkook, and nodded slowly as if to say, finally. The fans who watched the millions of questions were posted immediately in response to the 5-minute live stream footage. Is that true? What is Jungkook referring to? Why does Taehyung appear so serene? The hashtag that includes her second name instantly topped, trending on X and Vapers in less than 10 minutes. But behind all that online hustle and bustle, but there's more to the real world than that. One of HYBE staff on site said that Taehyung and Jungkook remained seated together for some time after the cameras stopped recording, almost half an hour without saying anything. There was only silence and the occasional barely audible chuckle. No one dared to approach. Everyone knows the moment was not for the public, but for both. Among them. However, how could something so private be quickly captured and disseminated? Numerous speculations that it was part of the content of their latest documentary, while others were convinced that it was an unplanned event that happened out of the blue. And because of this, everything is mysterious because to date, neither has offered any official clarification. Some media outlets try to contact the agency, but they gave only a short answer. We have no additional statements at the moment. The answer actually strengthens public curiosity because if indeed it is only part of the content, why should it be covered? And if it is real, why is it simply left without clarity? To be sure, the dynamic between Jungkook and Taehyung seemed to have changed since those 5 minutes. Some fans who paid attention to the details of the recording of their last concert in Japan said that the two of them interacted with greater sincerity, depth, and intensity than before. Their stares on stage were no longer mere professionalism. They were silent communication that could only be understood by two people who knew each other too much that in an entertainment world full of imagery. Without engineering, such occurrences are rare. And that's why what happened between Jungkook and Taehyung felt so jarring. Not just because of who they are, but because of the courage to share something so intimate with the public. However, there's something else more interesting than all this. In the brief video that follows the confession, someone from behind the camera can be heard whispering, "It's about time, huh?" The sentence caused a lot of speculation among fans. Does this mean that Jungkook has been planning this moment for a long time? Or is all this just an accidental coincidence? Nobody really knows for sure. But one thing is clear. That 5-minute moment has changed things. Not just for the two of them but also for millions of other people who watched it. Because in a world full of falsehoods, the slightest honesty feels like a revolution. Taehyung also uploaded a picture to Instagram at dusk. Just a photo of a night sky. With a short caption. "It's peaceful now." No name, no context. But for those in the know, the phrase is sufficient to elicit an overwhelming range of feelings. What exactly happened a few minutes ago? Is that a confession, an apology, or something bigger than just words? We don't know yet. But if you look at the way the world reacts, one thing is for sure. That moment is not the end of the story, but rather the beginning of something much bigger, deeper, and possible bolder than they have ever been. A few hours after the moment went viral, the street in front of the HYBE building became more crowded than usual. The media vehicles arrived on the sidewalk, reporters waiting under the pouring rain, hoping to see a glimpse of Jungkook or Taehyung's face. Coming out of the building. The camera lights up before anyone even appears and every sound of footsteps makes all heads turn, but nothing came out. The door remains tightly closed as if harboring a secret that is not ready to open. In the virtual world. The situation is much hotter. Hashtags with her second name continue to occupy the tops of trending topics for hours. Every second, thousands of new comments appear. Some are overwhelmed, some are confused, some refuse to believe. "I know it's not just content," wrote one fan from Brazil. Jungkook's appearance at Taehyung, "It felt too real. No one can fake that." On the other hand, additional comments are presented in a more tone of skepticism. "Maybe this is part of BTS's next secret project," wrote one user from Korea. "They know how to make moments that go viral." Behind all the speculation, however, one thing is clear. What transpired in those 5 minutes has shaken more than just fandom. People started talking about honesty, about the courage to show emotions in public, about relationships between people who have been wrapped in the image and pressure of the entertainment industry for too long. Moreover, whether you are aware of it or not, Jungkook has created a new setting for discussions about sincerity, in a world where almost everything is perfectly curated. The atmosphere inside the structure is different. Some of the staff recounted that after the incident, Jungkook asked for some time alone. In the rehearsal room, he closed the door, turned off the main light, and just sat leaning against the wall with his black hoodie over his head. A loud sound of heavy breathing came from outside, as if he were calming a part of him. Meanwhile, Taehyung walks into the lounge room, sits by a large window with a view of the garden and orders a cup of hot tea. He saw when he looked out the rain falling slowly on the glass, and smiled faintly. No one knew what he was thinking, but his eyes were no longer stiff as before. There's something peaceful there. Several other members arrived one at a time. Entered first, then sat down next to Jungkook without saying much. He just patted Jungkook's shoulder slowly. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "Such as to be heard but not to be recorded." Suga then appears carrying 2 bottles of water. At times, the most important time in life comes without a plan, he said flatly, but with a tone that contains deep understanding. Jungkook gave a simple nod. He was aware that they got it. Meanwhile, in another room, Taehyung received a video call from a former friend of his. There's not much to talk about, only a small laugh. And a mild grin. But from the way his eyes turned red every now and then, there was clearly a feeling of relief that was hard to hide, as if the weight that had been pressing on his chest had finally lifted a little. He knew that what had just happened would trigger a huge reaction. But, for the first time, he didn't care. I just wanted to enjoy the quiet of the night. When the sun rose, the entire world was already talking about them in spirit. The media from various nations began to publish articles, some with a curious tone, others with bold speculations. Is this the first step in a new era for BTS? Wrote one American newspaper. Or is this just their way of showing their human side? In a midst of glory. Even entertainment industry analysts began writing opinions on the emotional impact of Jungkook's recognition on the global image of their group. However, amid the rumble of opinion, Jungkook chose to remain silent. He doesn't write anything on Vapers, doesn't open Instagram, doesn't even answer calls from some big producers. He just spent time in the studio sitting at the piano playing a simple melody that kept repeating. Each note sounded like a sliver of an emotion that he was moving around. Music has always been a place to hide, but this time it has also been a way to heal. That a few hours later, a photographer who happened to be around the building captured a rare moment. Jungkook and Taehyung walking out together, wearing masks and hats without bodyguards. Without a crowd. They walked slowly under a small umbrella that was only enough for 2 people. The photo immediately spread on social media, causing new speculation. They look calm, wrote one fan. There is silence and no distance between them. No one knows where they went. That morning, some said they were heading to a private studio in Gangnam. Others stated that they were merely aimlessly walking. However, whatever it is, their speed appears to be steady, as though they have already gotten along with something. In the silence of the street wet with rain, their shadows extended on the pavement, walking side by side without a word. During this time, in the virtual world, fans continue to break down every second of the 5-minute tape, analyzing expressions, intonations, and even hand movements. Someone zoomed in on Jungkook's eyes, looking for the meaning behind his gaze. Others have written lengthy theories about their emotional relationships over the years. But amid the cacophony of interpretations, one comment came that stole the show. Maybe we don't need to look for the meaning. Perhaps what they show is just a simple truth that 2 people can understand each other without having to explain everything. Hundreds of people liked the comment. Thousands of people. That a few hours later, the official Bigot Music account posted one short statement. We cherish every personal moment of our artists. I appreciate your understanding. There was no clarification, no explanation, just that sentence. However, that is precisely the sentence that increases curiosity even further. Jungkook suddenly showed up late in the afternoon on Weaver's live broadcast. His face looked calm, but his eyes still held the remnants of fatigue. Thank you for caring, he said with a smile as he looked at the camera. Sometimes we all have something that is not easy to say, but today I feel lighter. There is no more information available. He only played for a short time on the guitar, then ended the broadcast with one sentence that left fans glued. Happiness does not imply that everything is perfect, rather, it means that you stop hiding how you feel. A few minutes after the broadcast ended, Taehyung wrote one sentence on Vapers. I love when someone dares to be who they are. They exist. There are no names or explanations, but everyone is aware of the intended audience. That night, after a long rain, the Seoul sky was clear. The HYB building was the spontaneous gathering place for the fans, singing old BTS songs while turning on their phone lights. Some people sigh and cry. They didn't know for sure what was really going on, but they felt a warmth, as if the bond between them was being strengthened. The relationships between fans and members had just grown stronger. Jungkook stood inside the building and noticed and looking out the upstairs window at a sea of light below. He breathed deeply and closed his eyes. Taehyung was sitting in his small studio on the building's opposite side, playing the piano as if they were talking to each other over the air.
No words are spoken. Only emotions flow. And whether by chance or not, at the same time, on the monitor screen of one of the producers, a notification appeared about a new file called 5 minutes. Nobody knows who uploaded.